So let me introduce my guests up here. From the Doobie Brothers, we have Patrick Simmons and Tom Johnston. Don Felder. And Dave Mason, bundled up at the end. So welcome, guys. How's everybody doing so far?
We're having a time of our lives up here. Where are the heaters?
Or the heaters. So last night we had the first night of performances. Dave, you were up first. Ship rocking and rolling a little bit. How was it for you?
A challenge. I had to sit down for some of it. Yeah.
And that's just what, to get your to balance, because I know you're talking foot pedals. You can't do that, I guess, while the ship's swaying. Huh?
No.
You can, but it gets weird.
We worked it out. A couple of jazz notes fell in there, you know.
And what about for the Doobie Brothers? How did it go? It was starting to calm down a little bit by the time you guys hit the stage.
Yeah, it was still doing it a little bit. You had to get the sea leg thing going, but crowd was great. We had a really good time. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, these, years ago, if you had said, I'm going to go perform on a cruise ship, people would look at you like, is that what it's come down to? But that's not the case. I mean, this is just a festival on the ocean, no mud. It's great.
Couple drinks you don't even notice.
Be practicing your own that way, see.
That's it. Walk around, get the sea legs going is right.
Yeah.
And Don, you're going to go up tonight. Now you've heard that the ship could be possible. No, we're on smooth seas right now.
It's going to be easy for him, please.
Yeah, I'm used to kind of staggering around on stage from all the shows I did in the 70s, so it should be just like normal, to tell you the truth.
That's what Paul Rogers said 2 years ago. I asked him, how was it performing up there? It was his first time on a cruise, and he said, yeah, it took me back to the 70s a little bit with the back and forth. So you guys have been very, very busy, and as I'll point out along the way here, a lot of commonalities of some of the things you've been doing in your latest projects. We'll start here with the Doobie Brothers first, because you guys have been all over the place. Put out this album, Southbound, in which you collaborated with some great names from the country world: Zac Brown Band, Blake Shelton, Toby Keith, Brad Paisley, Sarah Evans. When the idea was first broached with you guys, what was the initial thought?
We thought it was a great idea. Something, we love doing crazy stuff, and we just, all those fantastic artists that we got to work with. I mean, we kind of jumped at the chance. We had a ball doing it. So, I mean, of course, everybody wasn't on board when we started, but once a few artists started, saying they wanted to do it, then, it snowballed, and everybody jumped in there. But it was really great. I mean, we had, it was just one of those things where they kind of pushed the envelope for us musically, and I think the songs, the tracks, we cut the tracks with Nashville studio guys, and it was pretty easy process because it went really, really quick with the band, and we knew the songs pretty well. So, our performances are, a little more conviction, I think, maybe than even maybe the original tracks. So we just had a great time doing it.
And Tom, for you, what was the song selection process like? Did you leave it up to the artists that wanted to collaborate with you, or did you actually say, no, Zac Brown, we want you to do Black Water, so on and so forth?
You mean which artist is going to do what song? Yeah. Mostly the artists actually they said, I want to do such and such song ahead of time. There was a couple of places where that didn't occur, but mostly the artists said, I want to do, and it worked out fine because they all wanted to do different songs, so we were really fortunate from that aspect. I have to say that working with the studio cats was jaw-dropping. Really incredible musicians. I mean, we run around a lot of musicians everywhere we go, but just being in the studio with these guys, you're talking about 2 takes and it's done. I mean, it's done really well too, and you've got a large entourage of musicians. You got 3 guitar players, one of which is acoustic, and you've got keyboards, drums, bass, and a guy on pedal steel. So every song is knocked out like that. And the artists came in and did their overdubs it was pretty fast. I mean, they spent enough time to get very familiar with the song, and they seemed at home, and they were really, best thing of all, everybody was a prince to work with, man, really good people, really nice.
I should give some credit to our producer, David Huff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who worked with us on the album. He helped us to get the artists involved and, you know, assembled the studio musicians and the engineers and, you know, got the studios organized for us, and he just did a great job, and it was, you know, a lot of credit to him, David Huff.
And this is one of the threads going through the four of these gentlemen right now, talking about revisiting stuff. Dave Mason, you recently released the album Futures Past, in which you actually went back and reworked some of your best known songs and actually some lesser known ones. And what was the whole thought process behind that for you? Were you unhappy with some of the original recordings that you wanted to do that, or just, you know, another way to challenge yourself?
No, I have a little studio at home, and I'm always messing around in it. And it just happened that I have a lot of stuff sitting around, and I really wasn't, frankly, planning on making another CD. But I've been out on this on the Traffic Jam tour since last January, and revisiting some of those songs for my days with Traffic, and also pretty much turned into a musical journey of my whole career up till now. But the Futures Past thing was more of I had some things. World in Changes, for instance, I turned it into a reggae tune. I had a killer version of Sad and Deep as You that was better than the original. And then I reworked up a version of Dear Mr. Fantasy. And I had these tracks at home, and then I had about 4 or 5 new things. And so since I'm on the road so much, and pretty much on the road is the only way we can actually sell any music anymore. And on the road is really the only way anybody even knows there's even anything new, because radio is sort of not even there anymore. So it was more to have something there to go with the tour, since we did 110 shows last year, so it would be about the same this year.
Yeah, I can't imagine it's an easy decision coming to record new material these days because of radio and the fact that they don't no longer embrace the heritage artists with their new material. They just seem to be stuck in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It's gotten
so formatted, and there's no variation there, and there's nobody home.
Yeah.
There ain't no DJ. Just stick a card in and go out and smoke another cigarette and come back half hour later. It's terrible. There's just no format for it anymore. And the reality is it costs money to make music. It doesn't just drop out of the air, it's just so it's part of our business, and it's a huge part of it has disappeared because of the internet mostly.
And you actually, though, for this album, you turned to Pledge Music to raise funds for it. And how did that whole experience?
I kind of did. I did it for a minute and I pulled out of it, frankly, and I didn't feel like it was the right thing to do. I had somebody involved with me at the time. It's not anymore. And so I did it for a minute and then just sort of pulled out of that. And I mostly just leave the CDs. And the other thing that's interesting is I sell, on the road, we sell a lot of vinyl.
Yeah, it's making a little bit of a comeback. It's doing very well. Sales in vinyl have increased dramatically.
That's great. They can, clean their pot on it while they're listening to the music. It's
well, actually, to jump ahead a little bit, that was one of the questions was, do any of you guys have vinyl collections? And Don, I'll start with you, because the Eagles always were known for some great artwork on those albums and stuff. And what is your take on vinyl these days? Do you actually have a setup at home?
Yeah, I have a vinyl set up at home. I have a huge vinyl collection. I don't think I've ever gotten rid of a single piece of vinyl that I purchased or owned or stole from anybody in my life. I was sadly disappointed when I started listening to records on DVD or CD, and then even worse on iPad and iTunes and that sort of stuff, where you wind up spending $1 million and a half dollars in a studio making a great sounding record. And then you play them back on a $3 pair of earbuds off your phone. It's like, I'm sorry, that's just not the way music is supposed to be heard. And I have to salute Neil Young for coming out with the Pono, who's trying to raise that digital level to a level where everyone can have the convenience of the iPhone, but the quality of vinyl, or as close to it as you can get. So I'm a big vinyl fan, absolutely.
Yeah, I haven't experienced the Pono firsthand, but people are saying there are some things in certain songs that are being heard for the first time in a long time with the what he has come up with. So it's be interesting to see. Do you guys have, speaking of vinyl, one coveted piece of vinyl that just either stays locked away or you really put it on the sleeve, a rare album by somebody? Any of you?
1956, Little Richard. Here's Little Richard.
Oh, James Brown, the Apollo. Or Ray Charles live at the Newport Jazz Festival. That's a great album. B.B. King live at the Regal. That's another great album.
Just about any Miles Davis vinyl, period, for me.
Yeah, like I said, it's making a comeback. It's doing good, and artists are, getting the stuff out there on vinyl. Limited releases, but it's great because you get to see all that old artwork and stuff being brought to life. It was very involved listening, which, you'd sit there 5 songs later, you had to get up, take the needle up, turn over the side. It's not that way with certainly with MP3 players.
Plus, you used to be able to sit there and learn a lot about the lyrics. You could actually read the lyrics without a microscope. There's a lot of photography of the band that now isn't on jackets. If you actually buy a CD or download something, you get very little artwork with it. You just don't learn much about the product, the producers, the players, everything. It's just in such small fonts that just, unless you're like a fanatic that you're going to read that stuff, or a vinyl, anybody could sit down and scroll through it, and they had pull-out posters and all sorts of really great stuff that just doesn't exist today.
Even less with streaming.
Yeah, of course.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I used to go to the hi-fi store to find albums. They didn't have like record stores hardly. You'd go where they sold hi-fis and appliances, and they had a record section. And you could go in and they had a little room where you could put the album on and listen to the tracks before you bought the album.
Listening booth.
And now, if you go into some of the vinyl stores, I love it, the retro stores, you go in there and there's all the albums, and you walk in and you smell that smell of those records. And they brought back the little listening booth in a few of them that I've been to, so that's the coolest thing, to be able to go in and hear the album before you buy it, listen to all those clicks and pops and going by. It's just, something nostalgic about it. So, that's what I do in my days off on the road, is I go to all the vinyl stores and look for stuff I never could afford when I was a kid.
If you could find them. That's
That's
the one
right.
great thing about Record Store Day, which is to celebrate the independent record shops. And a lot of artists are going back, and for Record Store Day, which happens in April and November, they are releasing a lot of classic stuff, sometimes with bonus material. So it's nice that the artists are getting involved in trying to save the little mom and pop shops that are, hardly out there anymore.
I want to say, if I can put it into words here, Dave Mason has been such a huge influence on me personally, and probably all of us sitting up here.
Now, how much did that cost?
Really one of the great influences for musicians, all across the world. And thank you, Dave, for all the great music. And speaking of great ideas, how about Dave's album, that marbleized
Alone Together.
vinyl? That was
Great
fabulous. What a great innovation.
Right there.
You know, speaking of,
There it is.
There it is.
The coolest.
one of the,
That's Dave Jr.
I'll catch you later, man.
a lot of the folks here sent in some questions, and there were quite a few so on this topic. So since you bring it up, Patrick, about Dave being an influence, just you know, quickly down the line, you know, greatest musical influence. Who was the person that inspired you most to pick up a guitar, play the piano, whatever it may be?
Well, I remember seeing Elvis Presley on the Ed Sullivan Show on a little black and white screen, and there were hundreds of girls screaming at him.
I want to do that.
You know, I think I want to do that. That looks like a good job. And went out and got a guitar from a kid across the street and figured out how to play and taught myself. And I was playing in little theaters and stuff around fraternity parties when I was way too young to be around that many drunks. And, you know, just started a career because I loved to play music. But I would say Elvis Presley.
And Dave, for you?
Well, I'd say part of what he said would have to be, we'd have to all mirror that one. When I started, it was, I mean, I was a guitar. It was the guitar that I wanted. So I was very much into instrumental music. And my big influence in the very beginning was a band that never made it here in America, but was huge all over the world, were the Shadows. Hank Marvin. I wanted to be Hank Marvin when I first started. In fact, I just started putting Apache back in my shows, and I played it in 53 years since I played that song.
Wow. Yeah, Brian May of Queen, a big Hank Marvin fan as well. A lot of people turn to him as an influence from your side.
Yeah. And then it just sort of developed, you know, obviously, then as my, you know, I was about at 15, and then as I started listening more, obviously all the, just the great blues players. I mean, Albert King, I think, probably is one of my all-time. And Elmore James and Albert King.
And for you, Tom?
That's one of them. He just said Albert King. I call them the three kings. There's Albert, Freddie, and BB. And when everybody was starting out, you had to know how to play Hideaway if you were going to play a gig in Visalia, California, anyway. And so everybody learned to play that song. But starting out at the very front end of it, I was influenced by Bo Diddley and Jimmy Reed, which is as far apart as you can get as far as music goes. But the rhythm of Bo Diddley to me was mind-blowing. And then as far as just songs and stuff, Jimmy Reed was an easy place to start on guitar. So, and then from then you'd leapfrog up to the guys we've talked about as far as blues guys, because I've always kind of come from blues and R&B, you know, morphing on to James Brown and Little Willie John and Little Junior Parker and a whole lot of guys. And that's kind of where all that came from. But actually, as the guitar itself, I would say that Bo Diddley was the first guy, along with Jimmy Reed, that I listened to and tried to emulate.
And Patrick, for you?
Probably the first really great rock and roll stuff that I really liked was Bill Haley and the Comets. That was kind of the first, when I realized I loved rock and roll. I loved Chet Atkins growing up. Thought he was a great picker. I always wanted to be a picker. Chuck Berry was a great rocker. I mean, I could go on and on. All the people that have already been mentioned as well. But you know, and I love that rhythm sound when I first heard "Bye Bye Love" from the Everly Brothers. I heard that riff. I thought that was the coolest riff ever. So you know, I love that music as well.
And how about this for a great story? So Don says he's influenced by watching Elvis Presley there in Gainesville. It was in Gainesville, all right? So this past August, I worked on a radio special with Tom Petty. And one of the questions I asked him, I said, you know, influence, what made you decide? Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. And long story short, who should he turn to for guitar lessons? Don Felder. There in Gainesville. And Stephen Stills was also around. Not a bad little community.
Petty never really became a great guitar player. He became a great songwriter. You know, he was never a shredder, but he was playing bass in this band called the Rucker Brothers Band, who had two guitar players that were brothers that just thrashed artlessly, you know, at the same time. They just didn't even play the same chords. And Tommy was playing bass at the time and wanted to front the band because he was singing, but he wanted to play guitar. So I was teaching guitar in this little music store called Lipham Music, and this scrawny, buck-teeth, blonde-haired kid came walking in with a guitar and wanted to take lessons. And so I started teaching him there, and then working with the Rucker Brothers Band in their dad's garage is where they rehearsed. Eventually went out to some of their shows, just try to help organize what was going on musically in their band, so they weren't playing the same thing at the same time. And actually I wound up meeting one of the loves of my life at my second Tom Petty show there, a gal that was in the crowd. So Tom and I have been friends for, I don't know how many years, I'd have to count back, 50 years maybe?
Yeah, well, Beatles on Ed Sullivan, 51 years ago, just like this week, this month or something, so yeah, it's been a while. Not a bad, like I said, music community there in Gainesville.
Yeah, a lot of people came out of there. I had a little band called the Continentals when we were 14. Stephen Stills was the other guitar player in the band with me for about a year. He left. Bernie Ledden came in and replaced him, who was in the Eagles. The Allman Brothers were called the Allman Joys at the time. And Dwayne and Greg were just, every battle of the band we were in, they won. They were just by far the best singers and by far the best guitar player. Dwayne was the first guy I ever saw play electric slide guitar. So I sat down at his mom's house with him one night during Daytona. We used to go over in the summer and work the strips in Daytona and the pier. And after we got through, we'd go to grab a breakfast at a diner at 2 in the morning, and then we'd usually go over and stay at their mom's house in Daytona. And Dwayne was sitting on the floor playing slide, and I said, you gotta show me how to do that. You know, I'd seen other guys play acoustic slide, play the blues, but Dwayne was just like in another league of his own. So he taught me the tunings and kind of set up, and we'd sit there for 3 or 4 nights just learning to play, actually learning to rip him off of everything I could at the time, you know. If you're gonna steal from the best is what they say. Anyway, so to this day, I owe my slide ability to Dwayne, you know. There were a lot of people in that town that went on to become famous, you know.
So you've got this bug for music and stuff, and you pursue these music careers. Were your parents very supportive of that decision? Because I know, you know, a lot of parents might say, you know, play it safe, become an accountant, whatever the case may be. So Dave, I'll start with you. How were your folks when you said that, you know, you wanted to pursue playing guitar and make it a career?
Well, my dad wasn't very pleased. But, you know, my father, my dad was born in 1894. He was in the First World War, so he's pretty much out of the Victorian era. And my mother, who was supportive, she was, I guess, determined that I was going to do whatever it was I was going to do. So, the mom.
And was there a point where your dad said you made the right choice, you've done good, that, you know, he finally saw what it was and why you wanted to do it?
Yeah, I mean, he was 52 when I was born, so in 46. So, but yeah, he eventually came back that he would sort of brag to his friends. He would never say it directly to me, but it'd be, you know.
And do you remember the point where you said, yeah, this is gonna work, I'm gonna keep going down this path? Was there a particular song release or a particular show?
No, I just basically at 15 or 16 made my mind up that's what I was gonna do. And by sort of 19, traffic was started. I mean, I just sort of just one focus. Did whatever it took and wherever I had to be, slept on basement floors, couches. I mean, just whatever it took to do what I was going to, you know, that was my and I was going to go there hell bent for leather. And then, I mean, 69, 68, 69, pretty much after the Traffic split, I just basically came with a bag and a guitar and went 7,000 miles to the USA. And Traffic was sort of getting known. I was completely unknown, but I just up and left 7,000 miles and go west, young man. Seek your fame and fortune.
Seems as though we're doing okay. And Patrick, for you, parents were supportive, and when did the point come where you said, yeah, this is going to work out?
I'll tell a little story here. I'll try to make it quick. No, they were not supportive. You know, my parents wanted me to go to college, and I wanted to go to college because I love the learning process, and so I went to San Jose State and tried to get a degree, and my father kept saying, well, this, you know, your music is great, but you know, you better get a degree because you're going to need something to fall back on, you know, if it doesn't work out. And okay, you know, so I went on to college and did that, and I enjoyed it. But I was always playing music, and music was really the heart of you know, my passion. And so you know, years went on, and we did well with the music, and I married, and we raised a family, and my son got interested in music and started learning to play the guitar, and we went to visit my dad. I was living up in Northern California, and sitting with my dad, and my dad says, you know, so what are you doing, Pat Jr.? He goes, Pat Jr., what are you up to? He goes, well, you know, I'm going to school, and you know, getting my degree. And my dad, oh, that's good. He goes, what else? I go, well, I play a little music. And he goes, well, that's good. You know, you're getting your degree and getting that education, but don't let go of that music because you might need something to fall back on. So what goes around comes around. That's a true story.
And Tom, what about for you?
That's hard to follow, man. What was the original question? I'm getting lost here.
Just asking if your parents were supportive, but if you don't want to...
No, my parents basically said, don't do that. They said you'll end up, you know, doing drugs and hanging around with loose women, and I said, yeah, that's about it. No, they kind of freaked out, and the whole family, we were all kind of rebellious. Nobody listened to what they had to say anyway. It's not that they didn't have good things to say, but we didn't listen. So I went the same route as Pat. I went to San Jose State and played music all day and all night, although I was getting a degree in graphic design and really didn't expect to make it in the music business. I was just doing it because I absolutely loved to play. And it just kind of happened. It was back in those days when that could happen. It wouldn't happen nowadays. But it was a lot of fun. I got to say, I really appreciate the way things fell together. It was all kind of a natural sequence. And spending all those time sitting around playing guitar for hours and hours and hours, and just for the fun of it, not for anybody around, paid off. And my parents finally came to a show in 1979. That's the only one they ever went to. And she said, I really like that one song. It's kind of got a great beat to it. I said, well, yeah, I didn't write that. That was a Joe Tex song, and I can see why you'd really like that. It was a good tune. But, you know, later on, they kind of accepted it, because what are you going to do? It's a done deal. So while they were still on the planet, they grew to accept it, and they liked it.
And Don, I have to, one shouldn't assume, but I'm figuring if you're giving guitar lessons and stuff as a teenager, working in a music shop, you maybe persuaded them pretty early that this is something you can be successful at.
Well, it was the only way I could earn money, really, to tell you the truth. Mowing lawns, washing cars, or teaching guitar really was the only way to do it. We came from a very impoverished, kind of humble upbringing, and my father was a mechanic, worked literally 14 hours a day. But when he came home, he loved to put on his tapes of Tommy Dorsey and Glenn Miller and relax, and he just loved music. And psychologically, I think I wanted to play music to please my father. So he actually wound up helping me buy my first guitar. He found this old like Fender guitar that some girl had gotten for Christmas in a little tweed champ, which I still have, by the way, and brought it home for me, and it was like my first electric guitar. And he was encouraging and very helpful in promoting my music. My older brother, who was 5 years older than me, unfortunately, was one of the most athletically gifted and intellectually gifted people that I know. He got a scholarship to the University of Florida, academic scholarship. He got a scholarship to law school, scored the highest score on the Florida bar exam for like 16 years. He was a pitcher on the baseball team in high school, a quarterback on the football team in high school. So I was like the black sheep. There was no way I could compete with him. So I was in bars playing at fraternity parties and drinking behind the behind the scenes, and kind of there was no way that I was going to try to follow in his footsteps. And fortunately, I just, out of the sheer love of playing music, wound up just, when you have nothing to begin with, you have nothing to lose. So, you can only be so poor and so hungry. So you just do the things you love in life. And so I just pursued my love of music, and it led me to sitting here before you guys,
Yeah, I mean, I guess for all of us here, we're even though nothing's really handed to us, I mean, we all work for it, but I mean, we're very fortunate in that we've made a life and a living with our passion. We're very fortunate to be in that position.
That's right, thank you. It's all because of us, right? Oh, you know what I'm saying. We enjoy the music you make. And the fact that it still, gets played every day. I mean, you can't not listen to the radio one day without hearing Dave Mason, Traffic, Don Felder, Eagles, Doobie Brothers. It just doesn't happen. One of the, another question was, when you wrote a certain song, did you know it was going to be a hit? And I've come to learn, interviewing so many people over these so many years, that, chances are no, you didn't know it was going to be a hit. But to that end, we'll start, Dave, with you. Some of your songs, Feeling All Right.
Feeling All Right was...
What did you know it really did make an impact on people's lives, and was one of those, soundtrack of their live songs?
Well, I was 19 when I wrote it, and it was just, I'd been playing sitar with Traffic a lot, and so out of doing that, I think I was trying to come up with the simplest damn thing I could come up with. The song's basically just another, love story gone bad is what it is. But musically, it was an exercise just trying to write the simplest thing I could possibly come up with. 2 chords, that's it. Unless one chord, but James Brown had that down. So it was just 2 chords. And the song originally, the way I wrote it, the song is about not feeling too good myself. That's what the song's about, because it's feeling all right with a question mark. But where I got really fortunate and really lucky is a guy named, one of the great voices of contemporary music who just died in December. Joe Cocker got a hold of it. And Joe Cocker turned it into Feeling All Right. And after Joe Cocker did it, 48 other major artists did it. And there isn't a month goes by since, next year will be 50 years that I wrote that song. And there's not a month or 2 goes by that it goes in a commercial somewhere in the world or goes in a movie. So that's, thank you.
Well, I remember many times that you and I had been together and we were both feeling all right.
Oh, yeah. Yes, indeedy.
Goes with the territory, right?
And Don, for you, obviously, Hotel California is the one most associated with you, although you've been part of so many other great songs. But when did you realize that song, the impact that it has had on people's lives, whatever the case may be?
Well, I wrote that song pretty much as a demo musically, all the music to it, and some of the guitar solos on the end, and we went in the studio and recorded it in the wrong key. And when Don Henley first went out to sing it, he sounded like Barry Gibb singing in this really high falsetto voice, and I said, no, stop, that's the wrong key. So we re-recorded the whole song in the correct key for him to sing in, which was a horrible guitar key, which is B minor by some flute. That's where his voice set in the track. So then when we finished recording it, the record company had been pounding on the door wanting us to deliver this record so they could put it out after the success of One of These Nights. So we had this record company playback party at the record plant in LA, if anybody remembers that studio.
Oh, yeah.
And so we had all these record executives come in, and we played the whole album for them. And after they played Hotel California, Henley turned around and said to the record company executives, "That's going to be our next single." And if you remember in the 70s, AM radio had a specific format. It had to be 3 minutes or 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. You had to dance to it, or it had to be like a heavy rock song or a drippy ballad, which Hotel California was none of. And it had to have less than a 30-second introduction before the band or before the singer started singing. Hotel California has a 1 minute instrumental introduction. You can't really dance to it. It stops in the middle where that verse breaks down, Mirrors on the Ceiling, and then it's got a 2 minute guitar solo on the end, and it's 6.5 minutes long, and it's like a great FM track. So I turned and said to Don, I said, "Look, I don't think this is an AM track at all. I think it's an FM track, if you want to know the truth." And he said, "Nope, that's going to be our single." And I've never really been so happy to have been so wrong in my entire life.
You forgot the lyrics. They're incredible. Great lyrics.
And for the Doobie Brothers, who wants to feel this one? When, a song that, speaks volumes about the band, and that just every day people come up to you, or there's so many people, there must be so many stories about people saying, "This song has impacted my life. You were singing exactly what I was thinking." Any great stories along those lines?
We hear stuff like that all the time. I was going to go back and answer your original question.
Please, yeah.
As far as picking a single and thinking it's going to be a single, because that's only happened once,
Okay.
for me anyway. That was listening to the music, and I wrote that in the bedroom on 12th Street, the infamous 12th Street, where we were all hanging out. And 3 o'clock in the morning, which used to happen a lot in those days, I called up Ted Tippleman and I said, "You got to hear this. This is going to be a hit. It's going to be a single, man." He says, "Are you kidding me? It's 3 o'clock in the morning, man. I really want to know about this right now." And I said, "No, you got to hear this, man." And he was pretty good about it. He said, "I don't know." He said, "Maybe with some changes and stuff. I'm not sure about that lyric thing." And basically I said, "Nah, man, this is going to work just the way it is." And it was basically based on this utopian idea that if all the leaders of the world got together and smoked dope on this big grassy hill with the sun shining, the Vietnam War would end, communism would go away, and all that kind of stuff. None of that worked, of course, but it sounded like a good idea. And so that's the whole idea. If you listen to the music, have a good time, everything will work out. And that's the only song I've ever picked. Everything else I was wrong about. And but that's the one song that there was a moment of, I won't say clarity because it wasn't, but it was a moment of, I think this is going to work. And that's about the only one I've ever picked.
Well, there's still hope that vision you had may actually happen, because this world has not gotten
Ain't
much
working
better.
so far, right? Yeah.
It kind of worked because here we are on this boat.
We got four days of peace and love here.
That's right.
And anything for you, Patrick? Was there any song that you thought, would be a hit, or?
No.
That's usually the answer you get with that question. So,
it's kind of an accident, I think. You write your songs. I don't think anybody writes tunes thinking, "Oh, this is going to be a hit." It's more just it's a fun process really to create, and you're always hoping that that something works and you know, that will become something popular. But I don't think there's anything that I've ever written that I ever thought would be a hit, or, you know, there's plenty of songs that I've heard that never became hits that I thought were hits, that we wrote, that other people wrote, but you know, it's just one of those, I don't know,
Yeah.
you know, what the magic is there. It's just a happy accident, I think, probably.
Must be quite a feeling though to know that a song that you sat and wrote in your studio, your bedroom, or your den, whatever, and just quiet of your own space, and next thing you know, it's being listened to by millions around the world, and everyone with a different interpretation. I can't imagine what that must be like.
Caused an almost fatal car crash when you first hear it on the radio. That's us! Are you kidding me? We're on the radio. Yeah, it was a real, that was a big moment. I think everybody's life, everybody in the band went, wow, we're actually on the radio. That was a big deal.
Where was it? Will you remember when? And what?
San Jose, I don't know which street it was. I was practicing the theme of the song and, you know, just kind of mildly buzzed or whatever, and driving a Volkswagen, or what was left of it. But I do remember hearing it on the radio, and I was just blown away because I'd never heard something that we had done on the radio, or anything I'd done on the radio, or whatever. And I'd cut a couple of singles early on in Fresno when I was still living in Visalia. Needless to say, they never made it to the radio. And cheap little studios, but you know, you get the idea of having that hope and dream that sometime you're going to write a song that'll actually have commercial success. And then when it happens, as that one did, and that was kind of what launched the band going someplace, because our first single on our first album basically went Teflon and didn't have a great success story. So we followed that up with Toulouse Street, and that's when things started happening. But,
Dave, we always hear artists from England always say how horrible the BBC was when you guys were growing up, and that you had to listen to Radio Luxembourg or the pirate ships and stuff like that. So for you, did you actually get to hear yourself first on the radio in England, or was it when you came here to the States?
No. I in England. I mean, the weird thing, the first song I ever wrote, was Traffic's biggest hit, which is a sort of nursery rhyme song called "Hole in My Shoe." So, very different to what I do now, but so yeah, no, it's a thrill to hear your stuff finally. I'm like, oh wow, cool, this is great.
And what about today when you hear it? Do you switch a channel, or you guys all still listen in?
Well,
if you listen to the radio.
exactly, I was about to say that. I'm really not. You know what? If I listen to music, I'm going to go back to stuff that. It depends on the mood. I mean, it's either I'll put classical on or jazz, or go back get some old Eddie Cochran records and Buddy Holly stuff or whatever. I don't really keep up with what's going on. To be honest with you.
What about the three down here at the end? You guys listen to what's going on, or in touch with anything new today?
I try to listen to everything. It's great for me to not only be familiar with all the history that goes on with rock and roll, but what the new stuff is that's coming out. I'm not a big fan of rap, Kanye, that sort of stuff. Jay-Z's great, Beyonce's great, because I think they're very talented in what they do. But I think a lot of the new emerging acts have spent too much time playing Guitar Hero instead of playing guitar itself, to tell you the truth. Because I don't hear a lot of really great electric guitar players. There's a few, and one of the things I do is I record the late night shows, Letterman and those guys every night, and I just scroll down to the end of the show and see who's on, so I can watch them and see what they're doing, just to get a taste of what's going on currently. One of the things I've noticed is that when we were working as the Eagles, we wore t-shirts and football jerseys and ripped jeans and just kind of went on stage as five guys and played and sang. Now everything since MTV is all visual. The approach with the choreography and the pyrotechnics and the wardrobe changes, it's like a Broadway production or something. And I think it distracts from the actual music instead of like presenting really good quality live music. And I think that's what all of these guys up here still do. They don't decorate it. They just play it, you know. And it takes a lot of heart and soul and talent to be able to do that, and have people like this appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you were, you know, I know you guys were all at their shows last night. It was just tremendous stuff, and it's the music that just does the talking, as it should be. Going forward, what can we expect here in 2015? Doobie Brothers, I know around the Southbound release, you were talking about moving forward, trying to write some new music, but didn't have any clear direction yet. What's the plan for this year?
We never had a clear direction, so that's okay. If you put a label on it and you want to go some specific place, it won't work. This band has always been about, what have you got? I got this. What do you got? I got that. All right, let's try that. And everybody gets in the studio with their ideas of the song, and we all work kind of as a team, working on each guy's tune, and that's how it becomes what it becomes, because basically this band has always been about all kinds of genres of music, you know, from blues and R&B to rock and roll to almost a little bit of country, bluegrass, and it's all kind of thrown in there together, and that's kind of what's made the band sound like it sounds. So that will continue, I'm sure. I don't see that ever changing.
We're talking about doing some new recording upcoming here. It's really spontaneous. I think that's Tom said it like it is. We try to be spontaneous in the way we approach things. So, but we are writing and working on some new music. So hopefully we'll have something new in the near future.
Is that a tough decision to come by? To like Dave, you were saying earlier. I mean, you know, recording new music, it sometimes will go on deaf ears unless, you know, the fans who come to the shows at least will buy the CDs. Is that tough to want to even go down that road? I mean, going into a studio is no expensive task.
No, it's not. I mean, I'm the time that I do have. Like I said, there were 110. I did 110 shows last year, which means I'm probably out for 200 days. So, finding the time for me at this point to even go in and do stuff, though I do have, you know, I have a backlog of stuff that I tinker around with at home, I guess, I mean, and I've never been really prolific. I mean, it took me 2 years to write those 8 songs on Alone Together. So it's not that I've ever been really prolific. It just, something comes out. I mean, there's a lot of things I'll start and just go, yeah. But occasionally, sometimes the muse grabs you and something starts to make sense, and you go, well, that's pretty cool. All right, I'll pursue that. So, I mean, I'll still keep making music, and I'll still write and still keep doing stuff because it's what I do, and I'll be doing it until I, you know, drop.
I think we need to collaborate on something.
Well, I was going to suggest that maybe this would be, maybe we all get together here and do something.
This could be a band right here.
4 guitar players and no drummer, right?
Well, we're you know, we're going to and a drum machine.
It's cheaper.
Cheaper, exactly.
We'll get it put out on Pandora. It'll be a screaming success. You won't get paid for it, but by God, somebody will hear it.
And so, just quickly, Dave, we'll be back on the road. I know you're playing a big celebration in Miami coming up in March.
Yeah, which surprised me. I was invited to be on the 100th centennial anniversary of Miami, which is a pretty impressive lineup. I was really surprised when they asked if I'd do it, which is great because Miami is actually in all the years that I've been playing, is one of the most memorable shows I ever did there. I did the last but one show ever put on at the Miami Marine Stadium, and it was just a great venue, and it was a great day. So, always remember that show. So yeah, I was surprised. And then the rest of it is I'm out there on the road, guys. It's catch up with me somewhere. This would be a cool tour with us. I'm trying, beating their manager up for the last 5 years to do some shows with the Doobie Brothers. I think it'd be a great package.
We play a lot of shows together, though.
We have, though, over the years.
And he still sounds as good as he ever did, just so you know.
And Don, for you, last year you had a very successful soundtrack of Summer Tour with Styx and Foreigner, and which ended up in you guys re-recording Hotel California.
Wow.
And from that, you've got a DVD and an Access TV special coming up. Why don't you let them in on it?
Yeah, we shot, I think we were in Vegas, and we shot the Stick Show live that I set in with them. We were just jamming with each other on the road, having a great time. What a great group of people, and a lot of great music. And then Tommy Shaw would come out and sit in with me and play the Hotel California ending of it. So Access TV came out and shot that show, and I think it's March 7th, 6th or 7th, they're going to release it on Access TV, and there'll be a DVD out this summer. We're doing some dates with the Doobie Brothers this summer, which I'm so looking forward to doing. It's going to be such a great show and so much fun to hang out with these guys. I do a lot of casino work, a lot of summer festival work. I do tons of charity events for ALS and Children's with Cancers organizations, St. Jude's Children's Hospitals. I love to play music. And if I can go out and play music, make people happy, and help people at the same time, that's as good as it gets for me. So I do a lot of charity work. I really enjoy that, a great deal. So I'm pretty much working all year here, doing one of those or another thing. You were talking about earlier about writing stuff. Some people go through life hearing voices in their head. I go through life hearing music and lyrics for a song idea or a guitar lick, and so I've been nearly arrested multiple times driving around in my car with my iPhone singing into it. Just singing an idea or humming a guitar part, and I put these little pieces together that just at the time just seemed like little odds and ends, and then when I have a week or so, I sit down and go through them and go, that would be a good song, this is a good start, this is a good time. And so I wind up sitting on airplanes writing lyrics. I wind up sitting in the hotel room, which I was doing here last night, instead of going out to the bar, working on some guitar parts, just constantly doing that. To me, the creative part of it is really a fun part of writing together and producing music. So I've got a new record in the process. I'm going to try to get it out by next spring. Hopefully I'll find enough time that my manager and booking agent aren't booking me on the road, that I can actually spend the time in the studio to do it. So that's what my year looks like.
All right, yeah. And I mean, your last album, Road to Forever, 30 years overdue, I might add, was very well received. A lot of great songs. You put on a tremendous show. I haven't seen that Styx tour last year a couple times, so looking forward to seeing you perform tonight.
I was so shocked when I put out that record. As a matter of fact, during last summer, we had 3 songs in the top 10 on classic rock radio. One of them was a song that I wrote called You Don't Have Me, was set at #1 for 12 weeks. Another song was Hotel California, which some of the guys from Foreigner played on, a couple of the guys from Styx played on. It wound up at #8. And another song called Wash Away was at #4. So literally for 3 months there, we had 3 songs in the top 10 on classic rock radio, mainly because of people like you listening to classic rock radio.
It's a great thing. And the Doobie Brothers tour dates, anything else going on that
Yeah, we've got a ton of dates coming up this year. You keep falling in. I mean, you turn the computer on, you open up your email, boom, 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 boom. You're going to play here, you're going to play here, you're going to play here, you're going to play here. So we're going to be all over the place this summer, and well, not just the summer, the spring, the summer, the fall. We'll be out there banging around, so look for us at your local, whatever, someplace.
And Patrick, as we wind this up, I found that there's a little secret that's turning into not so much of a secret anymore. But every New Year's Eve in Maui, you talk about, Dave saying these guys wants to collaborate with all these guys. There's these jam sessions that go on New Year's Eve out in Maui that Some years feature Steven Tyler, Mick Fleetwood, Willie Nelson, Patrick Simmons, Alice Cooper. Little community out there these days, and it's always a charity event. And talk about that.
It's really was begun by Shep Gordon, who is Alice Cooper's manager. Does it every year. I think this was the 6th year in a row that he's put these benefits on at, gosh, where is it? It's the Amala is Shep's restaurant there in Wailea. And there's always a lot of great musicians, people who are over there vacationing. Alice and his band always are the kind of the nucleus of the whole thing, and gotta give credit to them. They learn everybody's songs. Everybody sends a list of tunes that they want to perform, and whoever shows up shows up. Steve Tyler's usually there. I'm there. Mike McDonald. Alice and his band, of course. Gosh, who was there this year? Big Al Yankovic, or Weird Al Yankovic, not Big Al. Weird Al. He's not that big. Mike Myers. Gosh, I can't remember who else.
It's a good list. So
But
far.
great. What's his name? Betancourt.
Nuno Betancourt from
Nuno
Extreme.
Betancourt was there this year. Sarah McLaughlin sang. So I mean, always great artist, and you never know who's going to show up. James Hempfield was there. I got to play Enter Sandman. That was worth the price of admission right there. Watching me play the solo, I don't know, it's pretty crazy. But a great time for a great cause. It was for the Maui Food Bank and for the Arts and Cultural Center there this year. So if you're ever in Maui, it's a great way to spend New Year's. They have a great dinner prepared there at the restaurant, as much as you can eat and as much as you can drink, and if you go out back, as much as you could smoke. So, Maui Wowie. But, great time. We always have a great time. So you're always welcome.
Yeah, sounds like a great show. All right, and we're going to wrap this up. So the last question, since this cruise is all about the experience of the live concert and everything, one of the cruisers here sent in a question. I'll go down the line. Dave, we'll start with you. If you were to give a concert to yourself, what songs would you like to hear? All right, on that note.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to give me a minute. I have to think about that. Of anything, you mean?
Yeah, it could be anything. Yeah. Well, here we'll make this even simpler. What's the best concert you've ever been to? Each one of you guys.
Well, there's probably a number of them, but I guess, getting to see the Beatles live when I was 16, 17, and so what you could hear in my hometown at the Odeon Theater, and they were on tour with it was Roy Orbison and the Beatles was the tour.
Dave is British, by the way. You couldn't tell by that accent, but he did grow up in England.
Well, you got to understand that not everybody sounds like the Gecko from England.
I like it.
And Don, for you, best concert you've ever been to?
I think it was 1976. It was in Kansas City. We were playing the next night. It was the Rolling Stones with Tina Turner live in Kansas Stadium. It was unbelievable.
All right, and Tom.
I'm just going to say this one right now because there's been a few that have had a large impact on me, but this one was the first one that had a huge impact. I came from a small agricultural section of California and worked in a crop duster shop as a kid most of the time. And being a hardened R&B freak, I went and saw James Brown in Fresno when I was a freshman in high school. And that was a life-altering event, I gotta say. I never, in my wildest dreams, had ever seen anything close to that. He played for like an hour and a half. I don't know how many costume changes or whatever. He had a huge band, chick singers. I mean, he came out and was doing like the good foot and all that kind of stuff, and I'd never seen anything like that. And he went at it from start to finish without stopping. I was blown away. I walked out of there a changed person. I've never seen anything like that, and it influenced me for the rest of my life.
And Patrick, we'll leave the last one to you.
Oh boy. It was 1967, 68. I think I was up in San Francisco. Went to Winterland to see Jimi Hendrix. I'd never seen Jimmy before, and that first album had come out, and I walked in, and I was with a bunch of my friends, and we had all taken some funny psychedelic substance, and I walked in, and I saw Mike Bloomfield, and I loved Mike Bloomfield, and I kind of saw him walking somewhere, and I went, my friend, that's Mike Bloomfield, let's see where he's going. And so we walked over, and I went over to and saw him go through this door, and so we stopped at the door, and I saw all these different people, the Paul Kantner from the Jefferson Airplane, Grace Slick, and all these people standing around, and so we stood there for a while, and pretty soon I feel this nudge next to me, and this guy goes, "Here, you want some of this?" And I go, "Sure." So I took this, I go, "Wow." And I look over at him, and I go, "Wow." And I see this little guy with this black hat with all these conchos in it, and I go, "Wow, you look like Jimi Hendrix, man." And he goes, "Yeah, man." And so that was my Jimi Hendrix experience. And then he played, and it was, pretty fabulous.
All right, well, I now have to ask, and now it'll be the last question. So Dave Mason was friends and recorded with Jimi Hendrix. What was he like? What was that whole experience to be his friend and then to actually make music with him?
Yeah, well, what do you think? Chaz Chandler brought him from the States to England, and was the bass player with the Animals. Brought him over, and there were these little sort of semi-private clubs in London, Bag of Nails, Scotch of St. James, where artists could go and unwind and not just not be bothered, just relax. And I was in one of those clubs, and before Jimmy ever did anything, and I'm sitting there and I'm having a drink, and there's usually a band playing in there, and suddenly this guy in this pair of denims and denim Levi jacket with a big electric hairdo gets up on the stage and starts playing guitar. I'm like, wait a minute. I need to find another instrument. This is ridiculous. And just before he'd ever recorded anything, so that's where I first saw him. I was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. So then I was somewhere else in another club in London, and same thing again, where everybody, you could walk in there, McCartney being there, Lennon or Jagger, just because everybody finished up in London. That's why it was so easy to sort of mix with these things. And there were only a limited number of studios that we were all using. So when I just started sitting down, I sat down and started talking to Jimmy. And he was a huge Traffic fan, and that's how I struck up a relationship with him. And then there was a point where, where I'd left Traffic, and there was a rift going on between him and Noel Redding, where I was actually going to join on bass with Hendrix. So I got to record with him. I did some stuff playing sitar and bass with him that I have no clue what happened to the tapes. But a couple of things that I did do with him finished up on Electric Ladyland. And one is singing on Crosstown Traffic. And the other is playing that acoustic guitar in his version of All Along the Watchtower. So, yeah, very fortunate.
Well, listen, guys, I really appreciate the time. I hope that the four of you do get together, collaborate, make an album, go on tour, and appreciate your time. I know you guys all appreciate their time. So, Dave Mason, Don Felder, and from the Doobie Brothers, Tom Johnston and Patrick Simmons. Thank you, everybody. Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
so much for saying that, Nicole. We really appreciate it. Thank you.